Hey guys, it's our second show of the day, episode 20B, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I'm Adam Biter here for Adam and Peyton's album talks, and we are just waiting on our co-host to join us, and then we can begin with our second show of the day to celebrate our 20th episode. Hi Jake, how you doing? Good to see you. Well, while we're waiting, just drop something in the comments. Tell me how you're doing, or any albums you'd like to see in the future, or donate to our fundraiser. I'm doing good, Jake. Thanks. Glad to hear it. Ah, there he is. Alrighty. And we should be good to go in just a second. Alright. Let's see. I'm really excited for this one. This is one of my favorite albums of all time. Hey, Peyton.
Hello,
Good to
how's
see
it
you.
going?
It's going quite
Second
well.
show of
Thanks.
the
Good to see you.
day. It
Yeah.
seems a little weird, almost.
Doing two shows in one day? Yes, it's a little weird, but
Yeah,
I think we've made it work pretty well.
I'd say so.
Yeah. I really enjoy
So
the
we
first
are
one.
now
Excited
doing
for this one.
one of the most accomplished pop music groups in all of history, or at least in American history, and obviously British history, the Beatles.
Yeah.
The
They're one of their most lauded albums.
1967 masterpiece, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Yeah.
Now, I believe
I'm
that
really
this.
excited for this one.
Here, I want to see which number album this was, because I believe the Beach Boys album we did was their
think it
11th
was their-
record.
I believe
This
it was
is
their
eighth.
eighth. Yes,
Yes.
because they did two records in every years from 1963 to 1965. They only did one record in 1966, and this was their first of two records from 1967. The other was Magical Mystery Tour, which is more like a soundtrack than a
Yes.
studio album, but still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of. I mean, the Beach. Blah. I'm mixing them up. The Beatles catalog was somewhat inconsistent earlier in their career. It kind of evened out near the end.
Yeah, because they had like different they had American albums and British
Labels.
albums and Canadian albums.
Yeah.
And all sorts of EPs and singles and stuff. Yeah, it was a bit crazy, but anyway, I'd love to get right into this one because this is a phenomenal album. I can't stop listening to this one, you know.
Here, you know what? I better close my door this time.
Okay.
Mistake.
That's all right.
Sure.
If you feel like it. Yeah.
Okay.
So our first song, the title track.
Yes, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
This
What
is
a
awesome.
mouthful. What a mouthful.
What this album does really well is Pet Sounds is primarily a Baroque pop album, and what this does is it essentially integrates that Baroque element, those swelling orchestral arrangements, provided mostly by George Martin, who's their studio manager.
Yes.
Just an absolute studio genius, and Paul McCartney's more rock ideas.
You know, if you think about it, this was both are kind of similar in that regard. They're both like one key member thought of most of the ideas, and then you have this like really fantastic like studio manager who helped to produce the whole thing.
I would say that in terms of involvement from all of the members, this actually has more involvement from the full band. I mean, I felt like at some points on the Beach Boys it was mostly just Brian Wilson, but at this, I mean, there's always the drumming, there's always George's guitar solos. There's a whole song that George Harrison wrote and performed, and that's a crazy one. But I mean, Paul is this is like this whole album was kind of Paul's idea, and he was the driving force behind it. But it still is careful to still include lots of cool musical ideas from the other members.
Yeah, I think it's a very good companionship.
Yeah,
with their producer, and all the members really sell the idea of this kind of fake band. I mean, this idea probably had been done before, and it probably will still be done quite a few
I
times.
mean, fake
But
bands are like just people love he got Sergeant Pepper from Salt and Pepper as a play on words. So that's like the
uh,
I mean, there's always been funny
oh
like fake band stuff like that Spinal Tap documentary. And did you know that the band Toad the Wet
my
Sprocket actually
god,
got their name from a fake band from a Monty Python sketch in the 70s?
really?
Yeah,
Huh.
because the Monty Python people had wanted to choose a band name that was so ridiculous that nobody would ever think of it. And then they were watching old Monty Python, and they're like, we should name this our band. So that's how it came
So
about.
was that the so that was an actual name for a band that the group had thought that the
It was
Python
the name
troupe
of
had
a fake
thought of
band
originally?
in a Monty Python newsreel sketch.
Uh,
It was funny.
oh
It was like a one off thing.
yeah, I'm pretty sure not a lot of people would have gotten that at the time.
Yeah.
I guess now we can kind of look back and laugh at it, though.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, this first song is superb because it switches rapidly
Uh,
between the orchestra and the rock and lead guitar and the solid drums, and you have these
was,
and then what really always gets me about this album is that this was like the prime of Paul McCartney's voice. Like his singing on this is so well done, and they use the echo chamber at Abbey Road to make it sound so much
yeah,
better. And I mean the effect that's produced with Paul's naturally awesome pipes and this fantastic new echo chamber that they had at Abbey Road is just phenomenal. Like it really hits you, the vocals on this album. And then when he starts,
yeah,
with
and
this, it
it's
was 20 years ago today. It's produced perfectly. Like that's what I get the sense about this album. It's like part of the like half the magic of this album is just how well it's produced and how good George Martin was at doing his job.
I could say a similar thing for the Beach Boys album. I'm not trying
I
to,
mean, obviously
you
Phil
know,
Spector's production was really good, but I feel like that George Martin quality, that's that indescribable je ne sais quoi about that he adds to this album. That's what makes it a classic in some
it
ways.
was more quality over
Oh, Paul
quantity to
actually did
him.
lead guitar on that song. That's pretty cool.
Oh,
I would have guessed it was George because
I,
it sounded
I,
like a George lead
yeah,
solo.
I didn't think it was. Huh.
I mean, George gets his moment to shine. We'll see later, but yeah.
You see, with this album, I can feel more of a conceptual idea to it, where they have like this idea of this like, hey, let's have fun. Let's make this fake band who isn't the Beatles, but it was
Right,
played by
yeah.
the Beatles.
And then
Whereas
they
in
dress
Pet
up in their funny
Sounds, it's
suits.
very much
Yeah.
still the band in their prime, but it's just a bit more of that Brian Wilson flair to it.
If I
You
have
know
to
what I
say
mean?
which album cover is better, I believe it's the Sgt. Pepper's album cover as far as period because
Oh,
it's unmistakable. I mean, you got all these famous historical figures and like you got Mae West and
yeah.
it's just an awesome cover in there in the center and you got a flower garden like that's one of those things that like makes me want to live in Britain or Canada. Like that they have like flower gardens where you can spell out words. I've been to Canada a few times and I've seen those and they're awesome. Like they make me want to live in Canada.
We have a
So
pretty
I
nice
love the flower
front
garden.
garden now. There are a
Yeah.
lot of rocks in it, though. That's kind of,
Well, either way,
that's the aesthetic of certain gardens. But
that's a good aesthetic. But yeah, anyway, this
Mhm.
first song is fantastic and the seamless transitions on this album between songs are just perfectly done, especially with this one. Where he
yeah, because
essentially
this
changes
leads right
meter.
into the second number.
He changes meter with his with the drum beats where you're leading with the woodwind section and then they start singing Billy Shears, which is like Ringo's fake name in this whole alternate universe. And then you launch into
Yeah,
With a Little Help from My Friends, which is in many ways like more like a folk rock song. Like it's what I remember from this is that this was one of the we used to have like a after temple like music sing along when I went to my old temple and my dad was one of the guitarists who played and sang in that and they love to do this song at that. So
it's like it does seem like the perfect song to
yeah.
do something like that.
It is.
It's a very sweet, affectionate number.
And I mean it's really strange how well Ringo's voice fits with this song.
Funny thing
he doesn't sing a
is,
lot of songs, but he sings this quite well.
funny thing is, when I found the lyrics to this one time, I always assumed like Billy Shears was an actual person and they just had him come in. I'm like, but now that I know, I knew before, but now
Yeah.
that I knew it's Ringo. It
Well,
just
yeah,
makes it
that was part of the confusion of it all. They were like they were like trying to throw you off. Like, is this a new person? Is this a new band? Like, what is this? I read the coolest story
well, they
about the
definitely
people who
tricked me.
got to hear it. So when they had finally completed this lab at Abbey Road Studios, they opened the windows and they just gave it a good like loud listen. Like they turned up their speakers as loud as they could and they just listened to the album the whole way through. And there were people who lived next door and they opened their windows so that they could hear it because they realized that they were listening to unreleased Beatles music for the first time in like a year and a half, and that was really exciting for them. So
Mm, sounds like it. I would have
they
loved to
had like an
be
impromptu listening
a fly
party.
on the wall in that studio,
I know, right? Yeah.
listening to all that
Right. I heard
timbra
about that. Is that
and
the Billy
sound
Shears name
bouncing
ended up
off
becoming part of the urban legend about Paul being dead?
the Paul is dead conspiracy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they believe that the guy who replaced
Um,
him was actually named Billy Shears. But that's kind of weird because I mean, Billy Shears is a character that Ringo is trying to play in the album, so it doesn't make much sense to me.
I've always thought that the Paul is dead
I don't
conspiracy
agree with the
kind of
Paul is dead myth.
stupid.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
But you know what? If it's just a fun thing, and I'm sure half of the people
yeah.
who believe in it are not aren't fully
I mean,
committed. I'm sure.
I've listened to those supposed Backmaster recordings. Like, there's one in Strawberry Fields Forever where they claim that it says that John says "I buried Paul" near the end. I listened to that. It doesn't sound anything like "I buried Paul."
Well,
And then
they made fun of that in a later record with Glass Onion on the White
yeah,
Album.
that was him deliberately trying to confuse them and throw them off
The
the scent of the
Walrus is
trail.
Paul.
Yeah, the
Is what,
waters was Paul. Yeah.
but that's a different record for another day,
Yep.
perhaps.
But anyway, with a little help from my friends, that's a superb song. Especially when you think about how it
Certainly.
essentially pioneered the use of a double plagal cadence, which is where you go. I mean, this is a bit nerdy in music theory, but it's a seventh to a fourth to a first chord. So oh, I get by. So that's like a D chord with a little help. A chord from my friends. E chord. So it's D A E. It's a cool chord structure that really hadn't been used that much in popular music before this song.
Hmm.
So it's an especially cool song when you take into account the fact that it essentially pioneered a new type of chord structure that is very popular now.
Huh. Interesting. I wouldn't have expected that because the Beatles
Well,
always kept to this very distinct structure, and with this album, it was
yeah.
definitely a bit more
The dominant
experimental.
blues
They
chord progression at the time was
were away
B
from
to A
that.
to E,
Yeah, the
or just B to
pop
E,
chord.
which is a standard cadence. Um,
Mhm.
but either way, yeah. I mean, they definitely did some pretty hefty pioneering with this, and I love the end too when it suddenly goes to that C chord and he just lets that high note ring out with a little help from my friends. He does such a good job with that. And I mean, Ringo's a baritone, so it was probably a little bit difficult for him to do that, but he pulled it off very well.
You see, with this album, I think it has such a power behind its first two songs, whereas with the Beach Boys, it's got more of a it's kind of easing you into the feel of the
Right,
album.
yeah.
I mean, I guess that's kind of prevalent here with this idea of
I mean,
the idea of
yeah,
these two songs,
absolutely.
but
This one's
I feel
definitely
like
more
it's got
rock
more of a
oriented.
raucous opening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although track 3 is it
I
calms it
love
down a
this.
little bit, but
I really
it
love
takes you into more of a psychedelic world. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, otherwise known for some people as a code for LSD.
Yeah, I've
I
heard
don't
about that. And then I heard how
necessarily
John Lennon
believe
dispelled
that.
those rumors by saying that it was about a pastel drawing that his son Julian had made in school. Which was
Huh.
weird because his son Julian was he was 4. I was thinking he was 2 at the time. No, he was actually 4. Um but he
When
but
was
this
he born?
song has
1960.
the perfect use of this organ, this synthesizer, and all these synthesizers were very new instruments at the time, and the fact that they wanted to use them on the album and that they used them so iconically is part of what created the synthesizer boom. And we can also thank them for that. So we can thank them for actual music theory developments, but we can also thank them for a lot of music technology developments. And
And the funny thing is, I don't think the Beatles really followed the music theory. Or at least not always.
I mean, a lot of rock musicians don't. I mean, did you know that Elvis Presley actually failed his music class in grade school?
Ooh, really? Ooh.
Yeah. So like a lot of rock musicians are not super into music theory, but whether they like to admit it or not, every piece of music uses music theory, whether subconsciously or consciously. Like it all can be dissected, and it all has chords and it all has melodies and
Yeah.
the elements of a
Maybe
song.
that's why I was kind of averse to taking a music theory class. I didn't get to fit it in anyway. I've had way too many other classes to deal with. But I was kind of hesitant
You know what I
to
mean?
the idea of it because I'm like, I don't know if I really agree with this like very
Right.
structuredized type of
Yeah, I know what you mean.
music thing. Yeah.
It is a great class, though, and Jake's pointing out. I actually took music theory with Jake last year. He's pointing out that this was
Mm.
one of the several songs on the album that John actually hated. Unfortunately, I don't agree with him on that.
Really?
I think that this
But
song
didn't
was
he
very
write it? Or was
He
it
did.
Ray?
He wrote the verses, and the chorus was from Paul. I think.
Oh.
I think it was a collaboration between them.
And here's speaking of LSD, there is a connection between the two albums now. Drugs.
Yes,
It
I
was
suppose
the
you're right. Both
60s,
of them were
so
very influenced by drugs and the culture of the day. But this one
sadly.
has got such mesmerizing quality to it. I mean, it really takes you to another universe. Whether you think that
Puts
universe
you in
is
a
about
trance.
drugs or it's completely clean and it's simply just a figment of the imagination. That's what I more envision it to be. Is just a very
A
transcendent,
daydream.
imaginative place. A daydream, exactly. A very psychedelic,
Yeah, it's kind of like
hallucinogenic
you
daydream.
see this
Um,
you see this woman and you picture all of these majestic cadences along with it.
what I was talking about with some friends online is how well vowels are used throughout this whole album, and John's singing like
Huh.
when he
I
when he
guess you
when
could
he
say
sings
that.
vowels, and I mean it's part of it is that British people are just generally better about using vowels. Their vowel
And
sounds are a lot
American.
more
Yeah.
desirable, especially in terms of music and texture than American vowels. But like they have
Yeah,
this,
I can tell.
smiles as you drift past the flowers, like flowers that grow so incredibly high. Like some of those vowel sounds are just very like they really lean into it and they bring out the beauty of the vowels.
Yeah, and this isn't the only song they really do that for either.
Yeah.
I can think that Lovely Rita does a lot
Lovely.
of that
And they have these very
enunciation.
thick vowels like lovely Rita Mita mid. Like the vowels are very open and loud and it's just they make
Kind of boisterous a little
yeah,
bit,
I think
but
a lot of American
they keep
singers
they
could learn
keep it.
a thing or two from the Beatles because and maybe just British artists in general, because I feel like just British vowels in general are superior to American vowels. I mean, there are beautiful things about
Well,
American vowels too, but you know,
I wouldn't say that if you're talking to somebody in the West, though. They'd probably kick your rear end for that.
probably. I don't know though, probably not. Well, anyway, that's a superb song. I love that one. Uh,
Oh, speaking of vowels, I forgot to mention the next song, Getting Better.
oh,
Does
this is
that
a
quite
great
a
one.
bit too. It's very.
This has a very Beatles quality. This is sort of like the "Wouldn't It Be Nice" of this album, in that it's a callback to the
Almost.
earlier music.
I
It's a
mean,
callback to that very
but it
poppy
has a very.
jangle rock
It's got a
style.
very harsh kind of opening with their guitar riffing in the
With their notes
beginning.
going dissonant against each other. They have a G and an F going dissonant against each other. That's an awesome opening. And then
Yeah.
again, John and Paul share the vocal duties so well on this song. And I know there's a lot of controversy generated about this song too, with the verse about John being his wife. But we've
But
already
he
gone
says
through the
he's
ringer on that
getting
one. So
better.
he
People
is getting
forget
better, which
that.
is the important part of the song, really. But yeah, we've already been
And,
through the ringer
and
on that on the Abbey Road album. So
I'm sorry to
let's not
tell
beat
you,
this
but
one up too much.
culture was different back in the 60s. God.
The important thing is that they're learning to get better, and that's what the song is all about. Just taking it one day at a
I
time. And
wish we would have taken their advice. I wish we would have taken their advice.
but yeah. Anyway, I mean,
Uh,
this is a nice song, and I love the piano outro too.
yeah, it starts off. Maybe that's the point of it. It starts off very very harsh in tone, but then
Yeah,
it ends very
nicer.
soft.
So it's almost like a chronicling of the person's journey towards becoming a better person. And I
And
love the
really, isn't
idea,
that what we're
like,
all supposed to be doing?
yes, exactly. And I love the idea that the central line is, "It's getting better since you've been mine." Like, since ever since I've had a reason to be better, ever since there's somebody in my life that has inspired me to be better, that's what's made the change. One person said that Paul did rhythm and George did lead. So I wonder what John did. I get the sense that John was a little bit left out by this album, but whatever. I mean,
no. I'm sure he was a lyricist, possibly.
I'm sure he did contribute to. I mean, I know he contributed mostly to the writing of Lucy, Benefit of Mr. Kite, and what's the other one? Good Morning, Good Morning, and A Day in the Life. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, that's definitely a high point of this album.
Yeah, backing vocals and hand claps. So I forgot the hand claps are quite nice on this album too. Yeah, but yeah, that's a great one. Ooh. I love the next one. The next one's very underrated as far as songs on this album go. I mean, they're all
I don't know.
They're all pretty well known compared to other songs from other albums, but this one among them is probably pretty underrated. And I love it mostly because of Paul's.
I don't know about that. I think the sixth one, or maybe number 7th, is a bit more underrated. But I think number 5, Fixing a Hole,
is
pretty. I'm trying to think of a word to
No, I know what you mean. It's a song about. It's another song about mental health in some ways, and it's about kind of freeing yourself from these distractions. Like, I'm fixing a hole where the rain gets in and stops my mind from wandering where it will go. And Paul's vocals again on this one, they sound so perfect with that echo chamber and that Martin led production. And you have this awesome. I would guess that it's George again, but it could also be Paul. They both play bass. There's 2 basses. But, I would guess that it was George playing the lead guitar, but the guitar motif on this one is awesome. Like, where it will go, and they have. That's just such a.
And you can't
instantly memorable.
And don't be remiss to mention the harpsichord on this, the opening.
The harpsichord opening is so cool because it starts in a non-swung beat. Dun 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 dun. So like straight eighth.
It's very linear, very much like a typical harpsichord.
And then it starts swinging. Dun 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 dun. I'm fixing a hole where the. So it's got a superb contrast between the non-swung and the swung, and polyrhythms pop up later in Benefit of Mr. Kite. When
they both did it.
It's polyrhythms on this album are just part of what make the composition of this album so intriguing and so engaging. And they appear all throughout, but here is where is one of the places where they're most prominent.
Would you say it's a bit more polyrhythmic on Sgt. Pepper than it was on Pet Sounds?
I would say so. I mean, as awesome as the instrumentation and the chords and the melodies were on Pet Sounds, the rhythms were mostly just straight up very, very normal sounding rhythms. But the rhythms on this record are really out there.
Yeah, I'd say what separates them is that the Beach Boys kind of created all these new strategies, and the Beatles kind of put them into practice.
Yeah, perfected.
They kind of tweaked and perfected them a little bit. Yeah, exactly.
Use them to their own advantages. But yeah, that's a superb song. I love especially the minor major shift where the verses are in F minor and the chorus is in F major. I mean, that shift is part of that, like fixing stuff, getting better, freeing my mind. That sort of transition from despair to hopefulness.
Apparently, if I'm reading this right, apparently the title of the album contributed to some other bands creating these kind of militaresque or just very.
I would guess that you're probably
salutary names like Big Brother and the Holding Company and Quicksilver Messenger Service. I haven't heard of them, but they sound very important.
Yeah, but I mean, so that's a fantastic song. I get what you meant about the next song being underrated, though, partially because it kind of gets a lot of hate for being essentially a music hall piece.
Really?
I mean, it's it's still modern by like music standards, by music history standards, but it's not rock at all. It's
Well,
it's definitely much more orchestral. It's probably the closest on the whole album to Pet Sounds, to the sound of Pet Sounds.
yeah, it's that one and number 8, but we'll get to that
Oh
eventually.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah,
But
and this is kind of similar to the Beach Boys in another way. It's kind of talking about a feeling of loss, almost,
right, yeah.
feeling of
But
lost love.
but what this song makes up
Kind
for in lack of
of,
like beat and rock, it makes up for in in arrangement and beauty and style. Like some of these orchestral
what
arrangements, and then the
style over
chorus has this
substance.
beautiful descant over the top. She, and then underneath, we gave her most of our lives. Is leaving. So, and I love that contrast. That's a perfect.
Mhm.
And Paul's vocals again are just very mesmerizing and very British, very
Very British.
very British. Yeah.
It
Friday morning at
encapsulates kind of the
9, she is far
highs
away.
and lows
Yeah,
of the entire thing. So
yeah.
solid number. Doesn't get as much credit as it should.
No, it really doesn't.
Number 7 is just kind of a fun one. I just see this as kind of their loosening
Here we
up
go. Yeah, this
number.
is
Number 7 being for the benefit of Mr. Kite
so.
with an exclamation point.
This was where like when I listened to the song, this was like a portal to the second half. Like this is where things start to get truly like chaotic and weird and
Is this
experimental.
the first song on the B
Yeah,
side?
and I mean, what it does so coolly in this song is it uses tape loops, which were later become a staple of their compositions like Carnival of Light and Revolution 9 um and the
Yeah.
other ones. But
Oh
but
no,
essentially
wait,
this
no,
was,
never mind. This is the end side one.
oh, it actually is. Right, right,
But
right.
it gives it a good ending. It gives it
It
a
really
fair
does.
ending.
I would guess that there are a lot of harmonicas.
Harmonicas in this.
There's like horse clapping,
Yeah.
but then so the verses are pretty straightforward and normal. For the most part, it's in 6/8, dunk da dun da dun da dun, like that's the beat of it. And then when it starts to get to right after they sing, and of course Henry the horse dances the waltz. Right after that, it goes into 9/8. I've been waiting.
I
You can
think
tell
he
I'm
does
really
a
excited
lot
about
of
it. I've been waiting like the whole week to talk about these polyrhythms
really.
because I find this just super intriguing how they do this. And then after the next
I'm
verse,
so
oh,
excited.
I forgot like the best part, where George is plucking on this really cool a dunk 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 dunk. I love that effect. I don't know what they're doing there with that guitar, but that is like the coolest effect ever. I would
Maybe
want,
they're like strumming it like a violin almost.
I would guess
Plucking.
so. Or it's some form of resonant finger picking. I would guess. But
Yeah, it could
wait,
be.
he just that instrument right there. That
I'll do that
Paul
actually.
did that.
Oh,
Yeah, Paul does everything wonderful. But
of
yeah,
course he does.
um,
Yeah.
Paul does that amazing. I don't even know if it's acoustic or electric or if it's. It almost sounds more like a sitar, which of course will pop up on the next song. But then they have that great
Mhm.
solo. They do the final verse, and you go, and tonight Mr. Kite is topping the bill, and then they put the 6/8 against the 9/8. So da 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 against da 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 da, and it creates this super surreal psychedelic feel that pervades the rest of the album.
Mhm.
And then they have these weird reverse tape loops of carnival music. And then they add, oh my gosh, it's you have to listen to this song. This is just super transcendent and cool. It's this
It's
honestly,
got
I
layers.
would rank this maybe among my top 3 of the album. I mean, it's a weird song,
Really
and
that
it's
hot?
not one that I would like sing, as part of like a fun live show or a sing along or something. But
Yeah.
it's super cool in the way they put it together. It's just it really turns the gears, in your
You
mind.
like the complexity of it.
I really love the complexity of it. Yeah.
And I believe he sings in minor on this. Am I correct, or is
It's
it?
minor. It's in C
Yeah.
minor. Well, it actually kind of hops around. It's if we're talking in terms of it starts in D minor. It somehow ends in E minor. But that whole psychedelic end section is kind of weird in itself. At some point he
Well,
ends up in
maybe
C
that was
minor.
their intent. They were trying to disorient you a little bit.
It's pretty much all minor, but it shifts between 3 different minor keys: D, C, and E.
You mentioned kind of that layering effect where there was like the carnival music, but also this very militaristic sound. So it's kind of giving you a sense of both like
Both fun and
duty
also
and necessity and like a bit of fun and
absolutely, yeah.
jumpiness, a bit of jauntiness. I'm using that right.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah. No, that's a superb song. I'll never not love that song. Um,
All right, number 8. We've finally gotten to it. We've been talking around it. So number 8 is "Within You, Without You,"
what a
which
song this is.
is
And you know,
very interesting.
a lot of people don't really like the fact that this song was on here. And what I always tell them is that you should be grateful because it's a 5-minute long song on this record. But what it actually originated from was a 30-minute long composition by Harrison.
You're
It's
kidding.
a heavily shortened, abridged version of that original composition. If you listen to
Oh
some
boy.
of his later solo work, he does like some of these Indian classical music compositions, like Hindustani music, in full form, and it's super long, and it's still it's more of the same. It's just longer and more. Um, it gives it more time to develop, and
Yeah.
it's a very interesting style because it's classical music, but it's a completely different um culture and heritage of the classical music that we think of, like Mozart and Bach. It's from a whole other continent. It's from a whole other part of the world, and it's influenced by a lot of different instruments. And that part of the signature sound of it is from those. You got your sitar, but you also got your tanpura, and you got your swar mandal, um, and all these other really cool instruments that I don't know how to pronounce. But he actually
Yeah,
performed it. This was
I wouldn't either.
this was a total George solo moment, and he didn't involve any of the other Beatles in this, but he did
Well,
involve
I mean, this was
what was it called? The Asian Circle. It was like a British organization dedicated to like the preservation of Indian music, and they contributed all the other instruments besides. I think George. Well, obviously he sang the vocals and he played the sitar and maybe the tanpura as well.
yeah, this was a point in their history where the stress was starting to build upon them, and they
It
were
was.
kind of beginning to divide musically,
Yeah,
but
this was a
they
plea.
still pulled it together for
Yeah.
this.
I mean, this was such a
It's
plea to recognize the value of love, and it comes at a really interesting time in history when you have like the Summer of Love and very counterculture driven society.
well, they were growing. They were
The
growing during
increasing
this time.
divide between love and hate, where
They hadn't really reached their peak until the Woodstock
right.
festivals of '69, but
That's very true.
I'd say, yeah, it was definitely part of that
Yeah,
counterculture type of free
it really
love
was.
type
Yeah.
of thing.
And
I don't know
that's
why
what the
you wouldn't
song is all
see that
about.
anymore, but
And it's really funny because you're mixing Indian classical music from hundreds and hundreds of years ago with lyrics that are extremely relevant to 1967 and are still relevant in 2020.
yeah,
Like, and
it seems like
a lot of those free love themes are actually what he learned from like his like Indian gurus and the and the Hindu teachers that he studied. And those themes pop up again in While My Guitar Gently Weeps and a lot of his solo music, especially the Living in the
I mean, in
Material
a
World album.
way,
That album especially is very very spiritual.
there are a lot of problems with the counterculture scene in the '60s. I mean, and people blamed the past generation for that a lot.
That's true.
But
But I mean, for
I
all
I
the
do
messiness,
like the
they did promote
idea.
a very nice idea of love.
Yeah, the idea of compassion and togetherness.
Absolutely, yeah.
We desperately need that
We
more than
do, we
anything
do.
now.
And this
I mean,
song,
we're all
that
stuck
whole
at home
connection song.
anyway, but it just
Yeah.
seems like we're dividing further and further apart, and I don't like that idea. There's got to be some
Imagine
way.
making an Indian song and calling it "While My Sitar Gently Weeps." That'd be funny.
Uh,
While my sitar gently weeps. That would be funny. I would
that
like.
could work too. That really
It
could.
certainly would, yeah. But anyway, this song's really nicely constructed, and I certainly
Coated in psychedelia, but
yeah,
so very beautiful. Very beautiful.
yeah.
Now, this is a song that I claim to have not have heard before I had actually listened to this full album. I didn't really know much of it, but it's
Oh,
a cute little love
this is a
song. Went on
an adorable song,
64.
and actually, I have a lot of personal connections to this song. I've
Really?
performed it with a chorus twice. I performed it once in third grade in the first chorus class I ever had. That was really fun. And of course, we changed a bottle of wine lyric to "Give Me a Sign" because she wasn't comfortable with having our third graders sing that. But Then we sang it
Yeah,
in men's choir, I think, when I was in ninth grade, which was really fun. Well, we might not have actually performed that, but we rehearsed it.
almost.
And it was a strange
Hmm.
arrangement because it added like a bunch of weird lyrics. Um, but
Oh, of course he did. Well, it is a very it's kind of silly. Let's
yeah,
face
it
it.
is silly.
It's sort of a
And then
silly
also,
song, but
for a while, it was my
it's got a
grandparents'
heart to
favorite
it.
song. So that's also a nice little connection to it. I just think it's a nice little song, and I mean, it is very childish. And it's not a rock
Guitar.
song, and maybe John Lennon was kind of right when he called it granny music, but it's still nice. Like I still feel like a certain spirit, a certain je ne sais quoi would be missing from the album if this was taken off and it just went straight into Lovely Rita.
Yeah, this kind of bridges the gap almost
Right.
between Within You, Without You and Lovely Rita, which is a bit more
Yep.
contemporary psychedelic rock, where this is more of like very folky, kind of just
Right, right,
a
right. Yeah.
silly little, a fun little song, and really that's all it's meant to be.
That's very true, yeah.
But
Well, yeah, anyway.
sometimes the most simplistic songs are the ones people
Absolutely.
remember the most. So,
I know that this one is very firmly ingrained in my memory.
but I find this one is really
Yeah.
top
Oh,
notch. Number 10,
did I
Lovely
mention
Rita.
the
What?
did I mention the cool line in here that proves just how British they are when they say every summer we could rent a cottage in the Isle of Wight if it's not too dear. Um, that's a Britishism and it basically just means expensive, dear
Oh,
in um and it's like a weird conflation that we have lost. Like nobody would ever think like dear as being expensive, but that's really where like the idea of calling a loved one my dear came from, like
uh,
that they're expensive to you, like they're priceless to you,
oh.
like that they're worth a lot
Well,
of money.
maybe that's why.
Yeah. I mean, it's very materialistic, but anyway, I mean that's just where that came from. I just wanted to offer that up as a cool linguistic tidbit. But yeah, anyway,
Well,
Lovely Rita, I love this song. This is somebody described this as full tilt psychedelia, which I don't know if it's actually the most psychedelic moment on the song. Maybe the end is pretty
oh
psychedelic.
no, no, no. This definitely is not as psychedelic as some of the other ones.
As Lucy
Like
or being for the benefit, but it's still pretty wild and
even
crazy.
Good Morning has
Have you heard the
bit
awesome
more of
story behind how this directly inspired Pink Floyd? So Pink Floyd at the time they were like a really fledgling
a.
band, and they were just working on their
Yeah,
first album, and they were invited into
mm,
the studio to watch the Beatles record
that
this,
was their first.
and they learned a lot of these studio techniques and they started to use them, and they specifically used them on one song on the Piper of the Gates of Dawn called "Pow Our Talk H." I
That's
don't really know how to
nice.
pronounce that, but do you know that song?
What is it?
"Pow Our Talk H." I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
I wouldn't know. I haven't really listened to much of their earlier catalog. I know most of
It's from
the
their first album in
really big out.
1967. It's from the Sid Barrett
Yeah,
era, which is the really early era. So yeah,
yeah, and then his mind kind of went the way of the dodo after that, or at least
yeah. Unfortunately,
that's how he's mostly portrayed in the music of Pink Floyd. That's kind of what makes them
Shine on, you crazy
so
diamond.
fascinating to
Anyway,
me.
I just find that super cool how this song in particular directly influenced another amazing British band, um, who
Yeah, and
obviously
it's
took the
kind of
height of
radical
psychedelia to a
in a
much
way.
more radical height. I mean, the Beatles
Yeah,
at their most psychedelic were still like a pop rock band, but Pink Floyd at their most psychedelic was
yeah.
crazy, just absolutely
It
crazy.
was more art. It was more art rock,
Let me take a
progressive.
view. Yeah. I
Ooh,
mean, if you want an
sure,
album, we can
sure,
always look at it and just show
certainly,
it in the
certainly.
comments. Sure. Uh,
But
yeah. But what I was gonna say, but this song is awesome. And I mean,
definitely, and
it's
it's
obviously
almost kind of the
a bit weird to think of
what?
like this guy just having a crush on this female traffic warden. And what's funny is that the
Why
term meter
not?
maid was
Yeah, I
in
know
Britain,
meter
that
maids
term
still
wasn't even a
exist.
thing until this song. It was an exclusively American word, meter maid. In Britain, they
Oh,
just called them
really?
female traffic wardens, but meter maid was the slang for it in
That's a
America.
little
And then
much.
after this song, a lot of people in Britain started using that
Well,
phrase to describe them.
it's easy. It's easier to say.
That's true, less syllables, yeah. But I mean, this is just a very fun-loving song,
Way
and you've
too
got that
silly.
amazing piano solo, which was actually played by both Paul and George Martin. They double tracked it to give it a
Yeah,
slight
it's kind of,
out-of-tune
and
feel. I love the piano
kind of,
solo in this one.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
got, yeah,
I
the
love the
piano
use.
bit
Did they use
is pretty
kazoo?
great.
I'm trying to think. Did they use kazoo on Lovely Rita? I'm trying to remember a part where they actually used
So,
kazoo on Lovely Rita. I can't
yeah, I
remember it, but
don't think
kazoo has a
so.
very distinct sound. I feel like I would have remembered that.
I, I would have to double check, but I'm not entirely
But the
super
end is where
sure
it gets
about.
it gets very weird and dark, and it changes into a minor key. Um,
With Lovely
and you have
Rita.
all these weird like sound effects like this panting and shouting and groaning and weird stuff going on. And I
Well,
think
I would assume that's a
that's where the psychedelic aspect.
euphemistic. No, no, no. I'm
What is it?
sorry. I just that and that
A little bit, yeah.
that's only a song, isn't it?
I
That's
think
just
it's
a
just
song.
oh, they used a
Just a
comb and paper. That's that.
Oh, really? So that's how they made the song.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Comb and paper. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's what I was thinking. It does produce a bit of a similar, except it's not as braying and abrasive as a kazoo, maybe. So I think that was the perfect choice. But yeah, overall, this song it's quite the song. You know, it definitely adds to the psychedelia and the craziness of the album overall.
And you know what? It's about a woman in law enforcement. I mean, who wouldn't vote for that? Okay, number 11 is "Good Morning, Good Morning."
Oh yeah,
That it's
I'm sorry,
actually
I'm gonna nerd out over polyrhythms
yeah,
again in this song, but
really okay.
this is quite
I'll I'll
and I
take
hate
all
that
the
John
time you
called
need.
this a throwaway. So John called this a throwaway piece of garbage, and that's another point where like I don't agree with that. I think that it was very well written, and like I don't know why he chose to hate on his own song so much, but this is a really well written
Well,
song, and
why
it's
did
so
he write this
perfectly.
one?
He did write this one. He wrote it about what
Oh,
he
of
felt like
course
was
it was.
the sort of the prison of domestic life at the time. He was married to Cynthia Powell, um, and he just had this great disdain for husband and wife traditional British life, when at the same time there's all this crazy counterculture stuff going on, and like he would rather be a part of that than of this very uptight bourgeoisie. I mean, I hate to use that word, but that's essentially what he was describing, this very like upper class uptight, like the kind of life that celebrities were expected to live. He had a great disdain for that. He didn't want to settle.
Really?
Um, and this is part of that, like this feeling lost in modern society and not knowing what people expect of you. And it originated from a Kellogg's cornflakes commercial. That jingle, "Good morning, good morning, good morning, good." And he turned it into this very dismal, very dark song about essentially being depressed about married life. Um, and
Huh.
it's a great
Well,
song.
they should have
And
wrote it with
and he
lovely
it's
harmony.
full of mixed meter. For the most part, it's simple meter though. Dun, 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 dun. Nothing to do but save his life, call his wife, and then when it gets to the bridge, it changes. Dun, 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 everyone knows it's like a ruin. And he's going into compound meter with a dun, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1. It's just awesome. I love that change. That's a fantastic contrast.
And
Um,
I didn't really pick up on the like Hollywood hates or the celebrity hates within the song because it's just such a catchy melody. You wouldn't really expect it, but
yeah.
that really
It's kind of like, what does it remind me of?
shows the
It reminds me of "Shiny
complexities of
Happy
the
People" by
writing and how
REM. Do you remember
strong
that
it
one?
is.
Do you remember "Shiny Happy People" by REM?
Yes,
That's what it reminds me of.
yes,
It's a song that's really not meant to be happy, although because it has sort of a happy exoskeleton, people interpret it as this very like peppy song, when in reality that's not
it's
what it
kind
is
of
at
like
all.
Born in the USA that way too, where it's
Yeah.
like people think it's got like, oh, it's about Americana, and I'm like, well, maybe not the most positive way though.
Yeah, but no. Anyway, and this song obviously
I
took
think it's
direct
kind of funny
inspiration from
though.
Pet Sounds with the animal sounds near the end. Um,
Hmm, I see. Yeah, because with the rooster and the I think dogs,
yeah.
if I recall.
But yeah,
But
that's a superb song. I definitely enjoyed that one.
it kind of both shows the chaos of celebrity life in a
Yes.
way with those animal sounds, kind of representative of that. So number 12 is a reprise of Sergeant Pepper's.
This was a nice one
I
because it
think this
started
is
in a
kind of
different key.
funky.
It started in
Yeah,
like
it's got
a
kind of
lower
a
key, and
funky
then it
feel
modulated
to
back
it.
up to the key that they started in, which I loved. And I love the line where he says, "Sergeant Pepper's one and only Lonely Hearts Club Band," because that was such a contrast, and I really wasn't expecting that, and that kind of threw me off. Like, even though it rhymed
Like
perfectly,
to think you once
I loved it.
again.
I loved the rhythm change there, but that was perfect. I loved that. They threw that little curveball at us, like we would not have expected that.
Ringo's drum work on this song is pretty fantastic
Yeah,
because he
I love
keeps
it.
the rhythm up
He really does. Yeah.
so well during the
And all in
song.
all, I think that that's a nice reprise. What all
Yeah,
albums have we
and
done that did reprises? We did Animals. A Picture of Nectar had a Tweezer reprise.
hmm
And maybe
I,
some others too, I'm sure. I mean, technically,
uh,
the Abbey Road,
I'm not gonna
the
think back to the whole thing.
the Carry That Weight is technically a reprise of You Never Give Me Your Money, in some ways.
But with different lyrics, so I don't really
It uses the same melody, but essentially, yeah. But
suppose.
anyway,
I mean, there's a
I
lot of repetitive melody throughout that whole
yeah,
section,
there is. But anyway, this is a
and
great
they've
reprise,
kind of
and it segues perfectly right into
number 13, "A Day in the Life," which is one of the biggest
yeah. This is
probably
a
hits
huge
off of
song.
this.
My grandmother always requests this for my live show. She loves this one. This is
I think it was a single. I don't
I
know.
don't know if it was a single. I know they did a promo film for it. And I know
Probably,
that
yeah,
they had a
probably.
whole orchestra come in, which is very reminiscent of Pet Sounds again. But the main motif is just really beautiful, and the chord progression is awesome. I think it's a moment of pure bliss in terms of compositional ability, kind of like with God Only Knows on the Pet Sounds album. Again, that echo chamber and that production value, that unmistakably George Martin style. That's what gives this song half its life. And
Oh, so apparently there were no singles from this. This
yeah,
was
and I
you
think
just had to buy the.
really wow.
But
Yeah.
maybe that's for the best.
Well,
That's for the best.
I know they released Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane as a companion double A side single, even though they technically were part of the album. But those two songs are both quite good.
I mean, and they both have more of a similar kind of psychedelic thing with
Yeah,
them.
they
Whereas
do.
this kind of modulates from being both like a straightforward, like an art rock thing, to being very psychedelic at other parts, to being kind of poppy at other parts. It toes the line between all those different types of genres, but
There
it
was a
blends
single.
them so well
Yeah,
too. It
it really
blends it
does.
so well.
And
I
then
mean, with the
you have this
Beach
beautiful
Boys,
crescendo with this "I'd love to turn you on," and then
and
this orchestra swells and grows until this just reaches a super powerful E chord, and then it's and then it's just and then that chord just resonates for so long. It resonates for almost a whole minute, and then you have this weird, and you can barely hear this if you listen to it with headphones. But there's this tiny little
oh,
frequency that's played at the very end. Well, actually, before the very end, which we'll get to. But it's played. It was added. It was a frequency that can really only be heard by dogs and not humans. And John Lennon wanted to add that because he thought it would be like a funny prank to play on listeners with dogs, like where their dogs would suddenly start barking and like they wouldn't be hearing anything.
What is it, girl?
That's kind of mean. Like that was a bit of John Lennon's meaner side, more mean-spirited side. But whatever. I mean, it is a funny.
He was being silly.
Yeah,
I'm sure it doesn't hurt the dog, so
I'm sure
it's probably an annoyance to them. But
yeah, I would guess it was.
And this has kind of a history, much like the Chain did for Fleetwood Mac, where it's kind of a connection of a couple of songs. That this was mostly John Lennon wrote but then you have the section that Paul wrote right in the center of
the bridge, and then he sang that too.
But it just works so well with the whole thing, and it's much like I mentioned, Fleetwood Mac's The Chain,
right,
where they just blend so naturally you wouldn't even suspect that they were separate at one point.
Yeah.
And that really goes to show you the
It certainly
musicianship that
does.
they had during
Yeah,
this period.
absolutely. And then the end. What do you think of the end? So what happened with this end is when it's dubbed onto the digital version, um, you have about 10 repetitions or maybe even 20 more like of this repeated Beatles
It's
clip
like
of studio chatter
noise.
before it fades out. And what really happened on the original record is that they pressed it into the run out groove. They pressed it just one time, the one little snippet of noise. And what would happen is on record players not equipped with manual return, whatever it is. I don't know the science behind record players, but if this record player didn't have a certain automatic return mechanism, then that would just play ad infinitum. Like it would literally play forever until you manually stopped it.
Huh.
So you would just be
That's
hearing
kind of
"Never could see
strange.
any
But
other way, never could see any," and then or whatever he's saying. It's
I couldn't
very hard
even
to
make out the
decipher what they're
words for that.
saying.
I thought it was just them
What
like
I always hear is
spewing
"Never could see
nonsense.
any other way" by Paul. Although some people have alleged that John is saying "been so high" in the background.
Huh.
And other
It's
things. They've
possible.
claimed that they've
It's
heard weird
possible.
things when they've claimed that they've heard really weird things when they turn it backwards. I tried to turn it backwards and I couldn't hear them. Um,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, it's
It's just
it's a weird.
noise
It's
to me.
it's a
It's
very
just
weird.
background noise.
Yeah, I mean,
For
obviously it
me,
was intended as a joke, but it
for
just
me,
gives
the
it
song really
such a
ends
haunting ending.
after the intense like growth of the orchestra and that final like
Right.
piano bit. That's technically
That's
where
kind of
the
where the
song
album is
really ends.
supposed
I
to
guess
end.
that studio chatter is just kind
I
of
mean,
an added.
the
It's
dog
a
thing and the
bonus.
the dog thing and the studio chatter and the run out groove. Those are kind of just like jokes. Like, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about in the
there
secret
was
track. Is
supposed to be a secret track. Oh, that's what it
I think it was
was.
I think it was that
Huh.
people who had the record players with the automatic return would never actually hear this thing.
Yeah, I didn't really know that.
So did you listen? I'm curious what version you listened to because what I have is a CD reprinting from my parents must have got it in sometime in the 80s or the 90s. And on that version
Oh God.
they put the
Well, my
they put
version's
the
digital,
okay,
so
your version was on like YouTube or
no. I borrowed it from my grandparents. It was on their computer. I just transferred it to mine. So
well, I don't know what
it has
version
that
that would be
studio chatter
what
in the
reissue.
background, but I didn't know there was a secret track.
50th anniversary.
There
That's what
wasn't.
they did
Oh, that
remasters of
could be
all the
why.
albums. Like it was a big Apple project
Yeah,
like about
it
a
wasn't
decade ago
on
where they did
mine.
remasters of all the albums, and I don't know what that one actually sounds like. Maybe they
Yeah, I
omitted
don't. I.
the thing entirely, but
It's possible. It could have been like one of those failed experiments. Like Paul McCartney did a song called "Carnival of Light" that never saw the light of day. It might. It's possible, but
yeah.
it hasn't yet.
Well, I guess
He
that's
said
pretty
he
much it.
hated it
Yeah.
anyway, so
Oh, he didn't like it. Well,
yeah,
anyway, I
he
mean,
just didn't think it
so
was ready.
for an overall rating, I'd give this like a 9.8 out of 10. I mean, I would rate it extremely
Rated a
high.
little higher.
This is such a gem of an album, really. Like it's very rare that
I'd have
albums
to
like this
agree.
come along and they just have such a profound impact on you. And I don't even know if I could choose a top three songs. If I had to, I would maybe go with
Oh boy.
maybe I would go with fixing a hole. Maybe not even that. Maybe I would go with being for the benefit of Mr. Kite. Um, maybe I don't know. Maybe not even.
If it's too difficult, you don't have to.
I know that
What?
Lovely Rita is in my top three, and I know that
I
probably
would
When
say
I'm
that
64.
too.
I would go with being for the benefit when I'm
Don't limit
64 and
yourself.
Lovely Rita. Those are my top three. If I had to kill myself over three, but I mean not that. If I
Well,
had to choose three, but yeah,
so lovely Rita.
being for the benefit and
Benefit
when I'm
Mr.
64.
Oh, I see. Well, I'd give it the same exact rating. I rated a bit more high than the Beach Boys. Like I said, they were pioneers, but
They were,
the
but the
Beatles
Beatles
kind of
were
ran with that
pioneers.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, they liked
there's
everything
actually
the
been a lot of
Beatles.
online discourse that there are a lot of people who sincerely believe that Pet Sounds is better than any Beatles album, and I mean,
I
I'm entitled
don't
to
think
opinion.
so. I like it. I think it's
I think
very
it's amazing. Yeah, it's
experimental.
a fantastic album, but it's not as good as this one.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, it's all a matter of opinion, people.
that's what
Just
we need to
remember
do.
that. I like the first three, in all honesty. Just the first
Those
three
first three
songs,
are really
yeah,
good. Yeah, I
they're
forgot about Lucy
classic.
in the Sky. Why did I forget about Lucy in the Sky? That now I want that to be my top
You
three.
forgot.
I can't choose the
Yeah,
top three.
I
Well,
couldn't.
anyway,
I couldn't do it. I don't
I
know.
guess we
With
should.
Pet Sounds, it's a bit easier to pick and choose. With this one, it just doesn't
Yeah.
seem as simple.
Well, I
There's
guess
so
we
many
should probably choose
great
the
tracks.
21st. Peyton, do you mind if we go back to Saturdays? Because with virtual school, with synchronous learning, Mondays are going to be a bit tough to do, I feel like. And I kind of like Saturdays too. It's a more
Yes,
stress-free day.
I would think Saturday would work.
I don't really. We must have gotten off of Saturdays during the summer or something, but I would rather go back to Saturdays in all honesty.
Yeah, because
As long as that's okay with
school
you.
started, and we thought.
So
I
yeah,
mean, and plus, it's no longer a hybrid; it's just virtual now. So
right. But yeah,
I don't think I'm
I was
gonna like
thinking,
it.
what
I
album
don't
was
think
I
I'm gonna
thinking we
like
should
it.
do? Peyton,
Let's
how would
see.
you feel if we did Harbor Lights by Bruce Hornsby? I feel like that's like the quintessential Bruce record. That's got amazing guest stars. It's right in the sweet spot where it was between his like mainstream rock career and his awesome jazz music. It's right in the sweet spot. I feel like that would be a really cool album for us to do.
Perhaps.
Were there any
Was that
ideas?
his like
We could
later
always do a
days?
poll.
Was that when he quit the range?
It
Was
was
that when
right
he
after.
quit
It
the
was the
range?
first album that was credited to him only and not Bruce Hornsby in the Range.
Huh.
But yeah, well, if you
Okay.
have an idea, we could always do a poll between them. What were you thinking?
Well, you also mentioned Bringing Down the Horse by the Wallflowers, and I wrote
That's
that
true.
down last
Yeah.
time. So would you like to choose between those two?
We could do a poll between those two. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to do Cardi B. I don't even listen to her. I don't know what
I think we're
her
mostly doing
sound
like past
is.
albums and like, I mean,
I'm sorry.
yeah. I hate to admit, I don't
I
even think
don't
there is
want
an album. I think that's just a standalone single, as far as I
it
know.
is, yeah, it's just a song. You don't hear albums anymore. People just go on Spotify and pick
Not as
5 different
prevalent
songs
anymore.
to listen to on loop.
Yeah. But
You
anyway,
just don't get the same experience you would with an album.
I'll put those two up for a poll, and I guess maybe I'll see you next Saturday if you'd be okay with that. I
Uh,
mean,
sure. Next Saturday is the. I'm trying to think of the. Oh
is it the
wait,
5th?
no, I
Oh,
can't do next Saturday. I
okay. Well, then
forgot.
we'll
I'm
skip a
taking
week. I
the
mean,
SAT that day.
we'll have fun. We'll skip we'll skip we'll skip a
Fun,
week, and we'll have.
fun.
I
You
mean,
think the SAT is fun?
I don't know. I don't know why I said that. But we can skip a week. That's totally fine. We'll just take a week-long break, and we'll go back to it on the week of the 13th or so. Oh wait, but then I might
Okay,
have
that could work.
something that week. Oh wait, shoot, I have an audition that day. So maybe we'll skip 2 weeks. Maybe we'll take a little break.
No, I don't. I don't feel like doing that to those who are watching. Maybe we can take a
I mean, we did a double episode.
Sunday, perhaps.
Why don't we just skip 2 weeks? We'll be fine. We'll get to it when we get to it.
Well, but then there's only going to be 1 week left until Christmas. So, and the holiday season with Hanukkah and stuff.
Maybe we'll
So,
skip the entire months of December.
how about Sundays? How about Sundays?
We could always do a Sunday evening, but then you got to get up early in the morning. Well, I guess that's not a huge deal.
Well, we could do a Sunday afternoon.
Well, I usually
Maybe like 3-ish.
I would say maybe well, we're actually almost out of time. It'll probably time us out in a minute, but I think we'll be able to figure out something, and I'll put those two albums up for a poll,
Right.
and I'll see
Oh,
you.
the Monkees.
And I'm really
66.
excited, and I
I'll
hope
keep
you all
that
enjoyed
one.
our 20th episode double feature.
Yes,
And please
thank
listen to
you
those two albums if
for
you get a
joining
chance.
us.
All right, bye.
All
Signing
right.
off.
See ya.